I'm Lori Balderas, and I'm so happy you're here. Well, once again, I have a very special guest. I'm so excited. Sal Tocco is here. He's an author of, I have to say, one of my very favorite books. I especially have read lately, but everybody knows I'm not a big reader, but reading more lately. And he's written this book called The Cardinal and the Crook. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to him about this book. I read it. It's been already well loved. Look at the the book is already I read this book very deeply. So I can't wait to talk to Sal. He's a retired business executive, and now he wrote this book. So I'm going to get to the bottom of all of it so that you can hear about it. And then ultimately, in the show notes, there will be ways that you can order the book. It's a great summer read, I promise you. I highly recommend it. So let's get down to business with my guest, Sal Tocco. Hello.
Hi, Lori. It's a pleasure being with you.
I am so excited you're here. And thank you so much for reaching out to me. And I mean, I never would have known of you that organically if you wouldn't have reached out to me. And like I told you when we had our pre-interview, you remind me a lot of my beloved father who passed away. So I was very intrigued. And also, I have to say, the cover of your book is phenomenal. And I know I'm going to ask you about it in a few minutes here. But the book, I don't know if everybody can see it, but it is praying hands, and one side has a rosary and one side has a handcuff. This cover caught my eye. The cover intrigued me. I couldn't wait to read it. You're Italian, I'm Italian. The title made me think, this could be right up my alley. So, anyway, I'm so happy that you're with us today, and you're coming to us from where right now? Where are you in the world?
Massachusetts. We live in Massachusetts in a town called Hopkinton, which is actually the town where the Boston Marathon begins. So it's where it all begins, here in
Oh
Hopkinton.
my goodness, that's amazing. And I do know that you are Catholic, but I would like to, I always like to have my guests tell my listeners what their background is as far as like, were you raised cradle Catholic? Are you a convert? What's kind of your family dynamic? So kind of a brief version of that, but tell us about what your origin is.
Yeah, definitely a cradle Catholic. Went to Catholic school at least up until high school, and then went to public school in high school. Was an altar server, and y- our faith is very important to us. My wife and I, our children, our faith is extremely important. And yet I'd say that it's constantly growing. It's not something you get to, and you know this, being a convert, you don't get someplace and then, okay, I got it all. It's constantly growing, and I embrace it every single day.
I think that's I mention that a lot in practically every episode that
Yeah.
being Catholic is ongoing. First of all, it's a lifestyle. It's not something you turn off and on, or you shouldn't if you do. And I do feel like we're always learning more, or we should be learning more, because there's so much to learn, and it's such a rich, religion and faith.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so you're a retired business executive. And is this your first book, Sal?
Yes.
It's your
Yes, it is.
first book? Oh
Yes.
my gosh. If this is your first book, then you have a big future ahead of you. I mean, it's truly amazing. And I I think I told you this, but I get presented with lots of people that want to be guests. And especially lately in 2025, this has been the year of authors. I've had many people reaching out that are authors. And I don't have to read anything if I don't want to. And I am very selective. And this book, like I said, caught my eye. I just think it's such a good book. And I'd love for you to tell my listeners like a synopsis from because you're the author. Tell us, an overview of what is it about?
The, the story is about two brothers who are abandoned shortly after birth, and they're raised by a empathetic, and nurturing Catholic priest, Father Pat. Now, the two brothers, James and John, are extremely close to one another, a strong bond, and yet their personalities are extremely different. One brother, very spiritual, very thoughtful, and he actually finally makes a decision that he wants to follow in his adopted father's footsteps and become a priest. The other brother has a good heart, but a bit of a wild spirit, and he makes some bad decisions along the way that lead to tragedy. Now, the book starts off with the brother who's become a priest learning that he's going to be elevated to a cardinal. And in a series of flashbacks, I tell the story of what events occurred in this individual's life that led him to the point where he's become this dynamic leader. The underlying message is that in our lives, tragedy, misfortune, disappointments are going to happen. They're inevitable. And we can allow them to bring us down, make us permanent victims, destroy us, or we can embrace them with an unwavering faith, courage, and determination, and use them as stepping stones to make us stronger and better. That's the story.
It is. That's beautiful. Beautifully said without giving much away because I don't want you to give a lot away. Um, yes, I think that's a very good synopsis of it. And then, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, over 30 years ago, it's probably pushing 40 now. I was sitting with an elderly relative. Uh, she was actually a distant cousin, but we were very close to her. We called her Aunt Florence. And Aunt Florence knew a lot about our family history. And so this one particular time, she said, we had an ancestor who in the late 1800s was a cardinal. In fact, it was thought that he might even become pope. I said, Aunt Florence, that's amazing. We had a cardinal as an ancestor. She said, yeah, but don't get ahead of yourself because in the 20th century, we had this other guy, this other ancestor who was a scoundrel. He was in the mafia. I said, wait a minute, The Cardinal and the Crook? What a wonderful title for a book. Someday I'm going to write that book. And life went on. I was working. We were raising a family. And then I retired. COVID hit. Was a perfect time to sit down. And I actually wrote the book by hand. And it certainly wasn't about the two ancestors, but that was the impetus for the book.
That's great. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's funny because during COVID, when COVID happened, it wasn't the worst thing in the world that happened, to our creative juices either, because we had suddenly had time to do things.
Sure.
And Simon and I both, our dream, hopefully sooner rather than later, is to have more peace and quiet in our life because we both have writing projects we want to do. And it's hard to carve out that time when you're running around like crazy. So, you're an inspiration to us. Now we say, okay, well, if Sal did it, then we can do it.
That's right.
I mean, of course, you have to have a good idea. We have some good ideas too, but
I'm sure you do.
so that's really, I mean, it sounds like you were in a prime position to, you took in this story from your aunt and then you just like kind of made it your own story, but that was
Yeah.
a good foundation.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's what they say about like real life. You take real life stories and you make them into something great.
Yeah, I took an online creative writing class, and I remember the author had quite a few, or I'm sorry, the instructor had quite a few insights, and one of them was write it as if you're remembering it, and that's how I tried to write it. And I also, as I mentioned, wrote it by hand, and I found that by writing it by hand, uh, it helped me to think it through and be more creative.
Well, I can tell you from my point of view reading it, it definitely it comes off definitely like a true story. It comes off I was telling you in our pre-interview that I think everybody reading the book will have somebody, they'll go, oh, that reminds me of this person. Oh, that reminds me of that person. I feel like they were all relatable. All of them, even the crook. I feel like, you either have been or know somebody that was one of these characters. I
Sure.
could totally envision all of them. The story is very rich as far as description, and like you get to know these characters. You get, like I was laughing in some points, crying in some points. I was upset, like worried. I had like all these different things going through my head as a mother, as a wife, as a
Yeah.
daughter. I was identifying with, all these different people and also in different times of my life. Like, I think they're all very relatable,
Yes.
identifiable characters.
Yeah.
Very, I felt that they were not, they seemed just like absolute people standing in front of you.
That's so gratifying, and certainly that was my intent, and to hear you say that is very gratifying. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I also think, it's a very, I sat down and just wanted to continue reading it. I don't always have time, but I was telling you that I've had two other books, particularly this year, that are fictional books that I've absolutely just devoured. And one of them was very short. We've had both of these gentlemen on as guests. One of them was very short, and I read it like, quite rather quickly. The other one was long, a long book, so good. And it took me a longer time to read it because I was kind of trying to put a certain time aside in the day. Yours, I fast tracked. I was reading in the morning. I was reading it on the treadmill. I was just like, I had to see where this was going. I had to see how everybody ended up. They felt like family to me. I think that was a beautiful part of it. I felt like I wanted, I was hoping the best for everybody. So it is such a beautiful book. And we're going to take a quick break because I have other questions for you, but I'm glad we got kind of those basics out of the way about it. And before we go to a commercial, this commercial, wait till you see it, Sal. I want you to make sure that you watch this commercial with my listeners. But the commercial is going to be about our pilgrimage to Italy in September for the Jubilee year. Father Matthew Miguel and I are going to Italy. So I've said this before, but if you're new to the podcast and you don't know what's going on, our deadline for the pilgrimage to sign up and get the fees paid are coming the end of June. It's fast approaching. And so I hope that you go check it out at the website, freshcatholic.com. The whole itinerary's there. This is an all-inclusive trip. Everything is included. There might be some meals that aren't included, but it's very worthwhile. It's an 11-day trip. And it might seem a little expensive when you first see it. Don't have sticker shock. Don't pass out. Other pilgrimages actually are costing more than ours. So, everybody's wanting to go on a pilgrimage this year for the Jubilee year. We get to meet the new Pope, Pope Leo. We get to meet the new Pope. So please check it out. Sign up. Tell your friends. If you can't go, perhaps you know somebody that would like to go. So check out this commercial. Don't skip over it. We'll be right back. Have you ever wanted to witness the miraculous and walk where saints have walked? This is your chance. Join me, Lori Balderas, host of Fresh Catholic Podcast, and Father Matthew Miguel, as we walk with you through Italy's most sacred sites. From the Eucharistic miracles of Lanciano and Orvieto to the peace of Assisi, your heart will be transformed by these extraordinary moments of grace. You'll walk the hallowed streets of Rome, step into the history of the Vatican, and witness the places where faith has flourished for centuries. Each stop deepens your journey. Each miracle renews your soul. We invite you to join us on an unforgettable, life-changing experience.
Join us and let your faith come alive in Italy.
And we're back. Okay, Sal. I have some questions about this because these are things I was wondering while I was reading and soon after I finished reading, because I thought, oh, I now know the author and I can ask him questions myself. So first of all, also he signed my book. I got a signed copy. I'm so excited. Anyway, who are you trying to reach with this story? Like what's your, what is your, do you have a certain group you're trying to reach or capture with this?
I think it would be people who enjoy reading about Christian or Catholic stories, people who enjoy family sagas that still like a little crime thrown in there and rather fast paced. My hope is that whoever reads it, like yourself, thoroughly enjoys it. And most importantly, find that their faith is strengthened and deepened. That's the most important thing. As I said in the beginning, it really is about that unwavering faith. And it's interesting. I read I do the gospel reading every morning, and then I read a reflection on it. And this morning in particular was about when the farewell address of Jesus in St. John's Gospel, saying, "I leave you my peace be with you." And the author in the reflection said, Jesus isn't necessarily talking about peace without any problems. He's talking about when those problems occur, when those difficulties happen, that we have a trust in God that He's there for us. That's the message that I want to get across, that trust in God, and no matter what happens in our lives, He's going to get us through.
Right. And I like what you say too about trying to provide a story that has to do with faith, has to do with family. Just like I told, my other authors that I've had on, we need more stories like this, because I'm finding as I get older, as I, become more and more devout, and, I'm trying to like separate myself from toxic things and people. I'm trying to, if I start to watch something or read something that I think is, not good for my soul, I'm turning it off or turning away from it. And I feel like we need more people to write books like this, because I would much rather read a book like this that is to me very realistic. Especially the factor with the crook side, because that is a very typical thing in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not in the same way as in this book, but I feel like when I'm reading a book like this, it doesn't have to be that the faith and the religion are beating us over the head. It's more that it's there. It's like
Right.
anytime I watch a movie or I read a book and there's that Catholic element, I want to read it more, because I feel like it's something I'm familiar with. It's something that's a part of my what's woven into my body and my soul now. And I want to lean more that direction, because I feel like I want to see, well, how is it going to enhance my faith? Or how is this going to draw me closer to God? Because there's always a way to do that. Again, it doesn't have to be super blatant and in your
Right.
face. But that's a part of the thing. I know Simon and I really like stories about family, or about Simon especially likes coming of age stories, or like I like origin stories. Where do people come from? And you definitely cover all that in this book. One of the things I like is your book is in parts. Like there's these different sections. And to be honest with you, I didn't really look at that before I started reading it. I just kind of dove right in. And then I went back and thought, oh, there's like these, I don't know why I didn't look at that in the beginning. I just kind of thought, I just want to get to it, But I like that you have parts: the early years, the crook, the seminarian, the mother, cancer in the church, God's plan, and transformation. So within those parts are all these chapters, right? So,
Right.
and you do kind of go back and forth. You do a lot of, what's it called? Reminiscing is what I would say, or flashback. scenes. You're building up those characters, and it's making a lot of sense as things go along. You go, oh, I see that. But I do think it's really important that the underlying part of it all, the important part of it all, is that they all are attached by their faith, and that Father Pat is such a inspiration and a role model to those two boys. And like you said, I like how you described both of them, that there was the really reverent, good one, and then there was the one who struggled. And, I was telling you, I have two boys like that, my sons. And to be the mother of both, they both have their beautiful things about them and their not so beautiful things. They're rough. They have some things about them that are challenging, for sure. But as their mother, I see the good and bad in both. I don't even want to say bad, but the challenging parts of them. And I do think as parents or as people in their lives, we do need to pray for them. We do need to, ask God to help them and take over for them. And I'm sure Father Pat prayed for those two boys, absolutely. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I'm not giving anything away by saying this, but the two boys are very close. They're twins, so they're bound to be close. Their circumstance of being abandoned, solidified their relationship. They both complement each other in a way. But I thought it was very interesting and very realistic that the crook, he's given an opportunity to not go down a bad road, and he chooses to go down the bad road. And much to everybody's kind of chagrin, and then there's consequences to bad decisions. And it's not just the person that decides to do that. It's the ripple effect.
Right.
It affects everybody. They think it's only affecting them. They think they're making a decision and, oh, well, this is my life. I'm doing this, and who am I hurting? It's none of your business. It does affect everybody. So I think you really, I thought that you handled that all beautifully, because I think in every single family, there's people or a person that is doing that in the family.
Absolutely. And whether they intend to or not, it certainly happens.
Right. So I think, again, you wove a beautiful story. I think, I think it has a good message for people to rely on God, to be there for each other, but to also not condone, other people's shenanigans, but to try to work it out as a family. Like they were always trying to, when something would come up and there was a catastrophe, well, what are we going to do? I feel like they were very solution based.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is that there was forgiveness there too.
Yes.
And you talk about there's a chapter on the mother, and certainly there's a moving scene in there where clearly there's forgiveness. And even between the brothers with the subsequent bad decision, there's definitely a bonding and a forgiveness there. So that's the other part of unconditional love, right? We love unconditionally, and we forgive those who we love, and help them to move forward too.
Right. And I would say kind of an acceptance of, I don't even know if that's the word I want to use, but they realize their faults or things that are happening, and they do forgive, and they want to make it better. That's what I'm saying. Like the solution, they, they're accepting it, but they're also, wanting to help each other out. Like you said, I like that. Instead of abandoning each other, they're trying to work it through. And also, I feel that they were taking it a step at a time. Like when news would come to them about different issues in this story, traumas and things that were happening, they they walked through them and tried to work them out. And I would say that that again comes from Father Pat, because he was a priest, and you know, and so he's going to have that sort of take on handling, you know, his family. So, and that in itself was unusual, that he was a priest and he adopted these boys. And I just thought that was beautiful that he did that. And that's early on in the book. So that, you know, that's not anything I'm giving away either. That's like a, you know, that's the choice he made. And it was, you know, a beautiful choice for those boys.
Yeah, and as I've shared with you before, Father Pat is definitely my favorite, and he he's that moral standard that we all strive to become. So he's a composite of all the good things I've seen in people throughout my life, both priests and lay people, leaders and associates. It's just a total composite of that moral standard that we all strive for.
Well, and I
And
think he
he certainly
obviously was
he
the
epitomized that.
anchor that they kept, you know, like
Yeah,
anything that was going on, they would, you know, gravitate to get figuring out what Father Pat would do, or they'd ask his advice, or if he wasn't there, they,
right.
you know, they would do it in reference to him. And you know, he is like a really good role model, and obviously he made a huge impact on their life. Beautiful. So we're gonna take another short break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk more about this amazing book.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll be right back. Let me tell you about all things Fresh Catholic, so buckle up. We have a podcast with weekly topic episodes and Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily Mass readings, on all platforms and YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, rate, and review. That would really help. Our website, freshcatholic.com, has an online store with merchandise and coffee, a blog, comics, info about our pilgrimage to Italy in September of this Jubilee year, and Fresh Catholic courses with educator Charles Merritt, including the Hail Mary, the Our Father, Sin, Sacraments and Grace, Advent, Angels, and Virtues. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh Catholic with short videos every day. Email me at lori@freshcatholic.com. I'd love to hear from you. And please consider becoming a Patreon or sponsor to help support our mission of drawing people to the faith or back to the faith. Phew! Spread the word and join the fun. Thanks so much. Bye. And we're back. Okay, Sal. So we need to, without giving a lot away, tell a little bit more about this book, so that people will understand why I love it so much. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to like step on any toes. So what else can you tell us about this book?
Well, the I'll share that one part, which is about the mother, and I I think that's very moving. We don't learn about her until halfway through the book. Certainly, Father Pat has spoken of the mother, and the message that he delivered to the boys is, "Look, something terrible must have happened in this woman's life to give up you two boys." And
Well,
he
because she
even
abandons
shares with them.
them. She abandons them on the priest's doorstep.
Right. And he shares with them the letter that she wrote, the very tearful letter that she wrote. They're about 8 or 9 years old when he shares that with them. And he said to them, "You can always go and get the letter. This is where I'm keeping it." And they knew it, memorized it by heart. And that's what I alluded to before, that at some point in time, there's a conversation, and it's James that says, "You know, Father Pat, I forgave her a long time ago. I think I agree with you. There must have been something that caused this uh, decision to happen." Flat, Flash forward, we learn about what happened, what the background was. And her name is Veronica, and you shared with me that Veronica is your favorite saint too. So we learn who Veronica was, what her family story was, what her relationships were, the type of person she was, and what drove her to this decision in her life. So it goes back to that conversation you and I were having before. There are things that occur in our life that we wish we could do over, but they're really a learning opportunity for us to grow. And people who love us will forgive us for making those decisions that we made. So I think that's an important part of the book, learning about the mother and her backstory.
Well, and I think what also is beautiful is that they do have an opportunity to learn about their mother. Father Pat does give them like that, where, we don't know what happened. Instead of like demonizing her or making it into a bad thing for those boys, they had the letter. They did come to some sort of, acceptance of it. And then ultimately, her story does come out, and it's a very moving story. And so, I think that's really an important part too. Again, very relatable part of the book. There's lots of heartbreak in this book. There's, a lot of positive things too, but just again, people's decisions they make as a family, things that, that have to do with, in this situation, crimes or, just bad decisions in general. But there is always that chance for somebody to forgive or to want to know the story. We also need to remember that we need to find out what the story is instead of just making a flat judgment on somebody with unforgiveness. I've learned this from my son who struggles with a lot of things. I always wanted to know what the story was. Like, people would come to me with things that they were upset about, and it was like, well, what happened? Let me hear the story and let me assess what's going on, and then let's work through it. So I think, especially nowadays, people just want to make a decision about somebody, or just again demonize somebody or whatever. And we need to know that everybody's human, everybody has faults, everybody makes mistakes. Hopefully they're repentant, hopefully they want to do better and come out the other end and make things right. And if they don't, then it's in God's hands, and we need to let God handle that. But if they do want to make things right, we do need to forgive them. We do need to
That's right.
also know that we make mistakes all the time too. We need to be forgiven too. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So I do know that Father Pat is one of your favorite characters, and I do know that he is a good role model just in general. And I would, I know you have a part of the book you'd like to read. So why don't you do that for my listeners now?
Okay, I'll give you a little background on it. The brother, who's the wild spirit, has come to the decision that he wants to testify against the crime family, and he's working with an FBI agent. Shortly before this meeting with Father Pat, his brother John, and Father Jason, who also is very close to them, he learns from the FBI agent, now, James, if you do this, I have to put you in the witness protection program, and you'll never see your family again. And he says, you mean just for a couple years? No, you're not listening. If you decide to testify, you'll never see your family again. And there's a strong family bond here, and he's struggling with this decision.
Well, and also, just so everybody also realizes that James is the one that's, the crook, and John is the one that's the more reverent of the two. And James has gotten himself involved in a crime family, works for them, and he was warned by his family that they didn't think it was the best decision, and he did it anyway, and they were right. It wasn't the best decision. And he then, because he was raised by Father Pat and raised, in this environment, he realizes that he needs to do the right thing. And so he does need to testify.
Yeah. So this is the scene that takes place. He's always been able to count on Father Pat to come up with a solution. So he's hoping that Father Pat comes up with a solution, but we'll see what Father Pat says. Jimmy, you've been carrying a horrible burden. I can't even begin to imagine how you must be feeling. I heard you say that you wish you'd never taken the job and how you're beating yourself up for being foolish and naive. And quite honestly, I don't even want to think about spending the last few years of my life without seeing or speaking to you. I'm sure that Johnny and Father Jason feel the same way. He paused, took another drink from his scotch. Throughout their entire lives, Father Pat had always taught his sons to look at issues from all perspectives before making a final decision. And now, to James, it seemed he was about to do it again. But before you continue beating yourself up, I want you to think of another possibility. Maybe, just maybe, as bad as this all seems, God has a plan for you. These are clearly evil people. They do terrible things. It's possible that God is using you to put an end to this evil. And yes, for the 4 people in this room, we'll pay a very personal and painful price. But just imagine how many lives will be positively affected if this evil is destroyed. Think of how many fewer victims there will be when these gangsters are put away.
Beautiful. And that's the thing. When people make a bad choice or a bad decision, you do have to look at it from all sides. You have to, if you want to fix it, if you want to work on it, be repentant. Sometimes you make that bad decision like he did, and he's now got to decide, is he going to help other people? Is he going to look at this in a positive way? Or is he just going to be selfish? He's already been selfish in the decision that he made to join working for the crime family. So I think that, his father gave him good advice. And I think, because he was raised in that way, he has to make the right choice for everybody. It's not just about him, and
That's right.
that's the lesson.
That's right.
Yeah, that was beautiful. What's your goal with this book, as far as not just goals like, oh, I want it to be a bestseller or something like that, but what I mean is, like, what's your goal? I think you said earlier on you'd like somebody to read it and enjoy it and get a lot out of it.
That's really it. I just hope whoever reads it thoroughly enjoys it as you did, and it helps to strengthen and build their faith. And if that's what I've accomplished, then I'm extremely happy. The one other uh, thing I'd say is I've said to my children, I'm not going to write an autobiography, and I'm not going to be around forever. And so what I would like is that when my grandchildren read this book, that they'll say, the message here is from our grandfather, and he really believed this. He really believed that you trust in God when things aren't going well. And that hopefully that'll help them through their life too.
And you know what
So
else is
that
great is
that's the other goal.
your grandchildren will be able to read it, and they won't be like freaked out that you've, used a lot of cussing. You didn't use a lot of overt violence. The love scenes are very beautifully done. And, that's the other thing with these books I've been reading that are Catholic authors. I'm not feeling like, oh, I've got to put this down, or it's not that I'm a prude. It's that things like that, like overt violence or overt sex or any of that, that's not necessary to the story.
Absolutely.
That your books all
Absolutely.
prove that you don't have to do that and get the point across and make it a good story. So, I mean, I think
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's a good part. Do you have any other books you're writing or books in your future?
I'd say there's a book in the future. I'm seriously considering writing a prequel. Now, we talked about Father Pat and how he's the moral standard. I have a very close friend who's a retired English professor, and shortly after reading the book, he said, I want to take you out to lunch and I want to give you feedback. And he had all his notes with him, just like a professor would. And generally, he liked the book. And then he made a comment. He said, that Father Pat, he was a flat character. I almost jumped across the table. he said that, and he said, "Slow down, Tiger." He said, "What I'm saying is he clearly is one-dimensional. He's that moral standard that we all strive for." And I said, "Ah, I see what you're saying." And you may remember in the book, I take a quote from Oscar Wilde that says, "Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future." So I thought maybe I'd write a prequel. How did Father Pat become Father Pat? So that's what I have in the back of my head now. I haven't sat down and started writing it. I've taken some notes, but I haven't started writing it yet.
Well, and that's very true too, because, not everybody, that's why, again, I love to learn about people's history or their origin story, because, that's a perfect quote, because hopefully you strive to be a saint. We've all we've all done horrible things at some point or another. We're all sinners. We all would like to strive for sainthood. Obviously that's a goal, but that's a very good point. And it's also, that's interesting because sometimes, when our children look at us, they don't remember that we were kids once, or that we did things wrong. Or, like I look at my little old grandma back in the day, and I thought, oh, she's this perfect little angel. And it's like, probably not though. My mom said, actually, she liked to go out a lot. She was very social. And, I mean, everybody has a past, and it's what you do with the future. That's the whole thing. And so I think that that's a really good idea for a book, because, not everybody is just, perfect from the get-go. None of us are perfect, but you know what I mean? So I think that's a really good decision to do that. Also, I do feel like, again, these characters are so incredibly relatable. They all have the potential of, like you're wanting throughout the book to say, well, I wonder what's going to happen to this character and this character and this character, because I feel like they become part of your family when you're reading this book. So I think that, at least that's how I felt. I just thought they were beautiful characters. And then I did not joke, and tell you, kind of like I told the other two guys, Simon Balderas and I are ready to make a movie about this book, because I can just envision it, and it would be
I'm
a
ready
great
too.
movie. So start sending money to Sal, and let's make a movie. No,
There you go.
yeah. I just think all three books that I've talked about, they all have a different story and a different vision. And I think they're all super worthwhile, and they would make beautiful movies that I think people would really want to go see. So you all definitely need to order this book, because you're going to love it. I promise you. And is there anything before I let you go that you would like to say that you haven't got to say today?
Well, something you mentioned earlier that you wanted to bring up, and that was the cover.
Yes.
And
Tell them who made this cover.
there's a story behind that. I have two sons also, and my son Steven and his wife Lauren, my wife and I were having dinner together. And this was at the point where we were getting ready to go to publish. And he said, "Dad, you got the cover yet?" And I said, "Yeah, well, this is the idea I had for the cover." And I described it to him. And he looked at me, shook his head, said, "I don't think so." I said, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, this is my vision of it." I said, "Do me a favor, sketch it out, and I'll send it to the company I'm working with and see what they come up with." It came from him. A CPA came up with a cover.
Great. I
So,
love it. I think it's
yeah,
awesome.
a very
I'd like a
creative
poster
CPA.
of it. Well, I so appreciate you coming. I appreciate you, giving me this book and signing it and allowing me to read it, and having you come on my podcast has been a tremendous joy of mine. I look forward to your second book. I look forward to, hopefully, God willing, moving closer to you, so that we can hang out, Sal, me and you.
I look forward to that. I
Two
look forward to that.
Italians.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I hope as many of our listeners that are listening will go out and read the book and enjoy it and deepen their faith.
I do too. So we will put links in the show notes of how you can order the book. And also, I'm going to provide you with Sal's email if you would like to write to him. or email him. And so go out and get that book for the summer. You're going to love it. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you, Lori.
I appreciate
Take
you
care.
coming today. Okay. Thanks for coming today. Thank you. Love you. Bye.